one of the big talkers out of this series has been Jasprit Bumrah, both when he's been on field and off field. It looks likely he's going to play in the fourth test. Does he have to play the last two tests for India, particularly if they level this series?
Um, well, I don't think he will. I think they made it very clear that he was only going to play three at the start of the series. I guess if they win here, he might get a knock on the shoulder to say, "Come on, one more go at the Oval." But the two games that he's bowled great, but India have lost.
Mhm.
The game
Yeah,
that the game that he didn't play for whatever reason, Mohammad Siraj, Akashdeep, they got a pitch at edge batting that nicked quite quickly with the new ball, and they maximised it. England didn't play well at all, and they won the game. So, for India to win the series, you would think that Bumrah's going to have to play a big, big role.
it's quite incredible. There was a stat that was going around not long ago, and their win rate since Bumrah's debut at Test level has actually been significantly higher without him in the team than what it has been with it in. Is there anything you can possibly put that down to? Because it just doesn't sound logical by any stretch of the imagination.
No, but and you look at his numbers; they're just ridiculous. So, um, I'm not too sure. I think it's just the game. I guess it's just these kind of things happen. But the spell that he bowled at Lords on, I think the fourth morning was incredible. How he didn't get three or four wickets, and England know that with Bumrah in the attack, the one thing I'll say is that they know that Bumrah's only going to have a ball about 5 overs. So I think England try and just see him off. I know he has got wickets, but England do try and see him off, and then they try and just play the other end, if you like, and get as many runs as they can from the other end. And when he's not there, maybe England just switched off slightly. Maybe they just switched off as a batting group because Bumrah wasn't playing. And when you have a player like Bumrah in your side, as a batting unit, you've got to be so switched on. You've got to be so committed. You've got to be so concentrated. And that's the only reason I can give, really, because he has bowled great. He gets five at Lords, and bowled brilliantly at Leeds, gets five there. You kind of go, oh, if your key trump card is getting those kind of wickets, surely you're going to be winning Test matches. But it's India's batting when Bumrah's played. They've just had so many opportunities in this series. Leeds, they collapsed twice. Lords last week in the first innings, they should have got a decent lead. They didn't. They were parity. They should have had at least 60, 70 run lead. And obviously not chasing 190 odd. That's not down to Bumrah. He batted actually nicely, but they should have enough in the tank to chase 190 odd against an England side on a pitch that did a little bit, but it wasn't a minefield. They just didn't cope with the pressure, and they've just throughout this series they've just showed they're a young side, they're a young team, young captain, and there's been two or three times now in the series where they've been really nailing the game that they haven't quite grabbed the situation. They've allowed England back in.
Mhm. From one of the modern day greats to the other, Joe Root, a fellow Englishman. He's now that Kohli's retired. Is it a little bit easier to sort of get a grasp as to where he sits among the all-time modern era greats? His counterparts in Smith, obviously Kohli as well, Kane Williamson. Where do you rank him? Do you get any easier as to where he might rank in the Test cricket among those big four?
Oh, I think they're all together, aren't they? I mean, it's hard to. They all have periods where they're kind of consistently dominating, and then one falls away, and then one comes back. It's very difficult to say who's the best, but Joe Root will go down as England's greatest by a decent margin, and I can't imagine once Joe finishes, and I'm looking at him thinking he's got at least 2 or 3 years left in him, if not a bit more, and that record of Sachin Tendulkar is a realistic opportunity for him to go and be the highest run scorer in the history of Test match cricket. And if he gets to that, I mean, there may be other players around the world, but I can't imagine there'll be another England player that gets to that because of the notion of T20 cricket. Who knows what's going to happen to Test match cricket in 5, 10 years' time? But he's certainly England's best. He plays the game with so much ease, and I know it's not easy, but he makes it look easy, and he's got that drive and that want to that for a long period. The first day at Lord's, batting wasn't easy; it was slow, and he just hung in there. He knew that if he could just bat all day, he'd get 100. He did. Well, he got it the first ball the next morning, but he's got this drive in him to do things for his team. It's not about his individual numbers, even though his individual numbers are great. He's delivering what he wants for the team and really driving this team forward with the batting hand. And the two key players still in this England side are the captain and Joe Root. Because if you took I always look at teams and go, who couldn't be replaced? Well, Ben Stokes couldn't be replaced. We haven't got anyone like Ben Stokes, and we've got no one like Joe Root. The rest of them, they're all good players and they're all flamboyant at times and very great on the eye, but I think most of them can be replaced. But you can't replace Joe Root and you can't replace Ben Stokes.
Mhm. By extension, I mean, Root hasn't looked like slowing down by any stretch of the imagination like, across the last couple of years, despite going into the twilight end of his career. Is this the best he'll be primed coming to Australia? I know over here in Australia, there's been a little bit of a narrative that, he's never made 100 on Australian soil, but is this the best he has been primed to face those Australian conditions?
Yeah, I mean, he'll be ready. He won't be thinking about it. He'll just play. I think he'd like 100, and if he gets 100, he'll know that he'll be putting his team in a good position. Because I think we're in a situation in Australia. I think we used to have to get 450s, 500s to put an Australian side under pressure. I don't think that's the case anymore. I think 300, 325 is going to be decent numbers. If you get 600, 650 in a test match as a team, I think recent times tells you that you're going to be in a strong position. The pitches, the ball, they just seem to offer that little bit more for the seam bowlers in particular. And batting over the course of the last 3 or 4 Australian summers, it's not been easy. So the 300 scores are looking very, very competitive. So again, you're looking at Joe Root. If he gets you an 80 to 100, England will get to around that number, and then they'll be in a really strong position as a team. But I do think for England to win in Australia, Joe's going to have to be very consistent for them.
Mhm. Someone who will certainly also tell you that batting hasn't been easy the last few years will be the Australian openers on Australian shores. From afar, what have you seen, and what do you sort of expect the team makeup to be heading into the first test? There's a lot of unknown over here. Sam Konstas probably didn't have the West Indies tour that he would have liked. Khawaja hasn't looked at his best either, albeit in quite tough West Indies conditions. But what's your read on the opening situation here? By extension, the top three, because Cam Green has been batting first drop and has looked okay at times, but hasn't totally locked it in.
Well, I mean, I think you have to assess conditions, and when you've got Scott Boland averaging 15 over the course of the games that he's played, I mean that's better than anyone that's ever played the game. And Scott's a great bowler, but the pitches have done all sorts. Those three games in the Caribbean, the pitches were poor. They really were poor for Test match cricket, and I felt actually for particularly a young player who's just trying to set his way in the game to go out and try and play at Test level. I mean, I look back at my career and think, how many times did I play on a pitch like Sam played on 3 occasions in the Caribbean, probably once or twice.
Mhm.
Whereas now you're looking at a young kid trying to set his stall out, and he plays on 3 pitches with a new ball and then the pink ball in Jamaica, and he did all sorts. You think, how do you really get that foundation? And you look at the other end, Usman Khawaja, who's a senior pro, been playing forever. If he's struggling, how are you going to expect a young kid to really kind of grab that moment? And then you got Cameron Green, who, he's 50 odd in Jamaica, is probably worth 150 on another week. To think that he got that amount of runs and the West Indies were bought out for 27, that tells you everything. So I wouldn't be overcritical in the Caribbean at the batting, because I thought the pitches were pretty poor. What's clear and obvious is that the Sheffield Shield rounds before the Ashes starts are going to be very important for a number of players. And Sam and Usman, I look at Matthew Renshaw, I look at Marcus Harris, I guess Cameron Bancroft will be given a mention as well. But those players who go and get 100, 100, 100 in the Shield clearly will get a strong mention to being in that Test match team in Perth. It's just a matter of the culture of the side and what it looks like if you bring someone in that's not been a part of the group for a while. But the selectors are there to get it right. They've got to pick the best player and the player in form. And I can't imagine that they're going to pick Sam Konstas if he doesn't get any runs in the Shield. So he's just got to focus on scoring as many runs as he possibly can for New South Wales. If he does, then he goes 100, 100, big hundreds. I could see him opening in that first Test match. But it's good actually that the Shield start will be quite a focal point for the team, because clearly those that do really well in it will have a chance of playing in that first Test.
Is there anyone in particular in the England lineup, on contrast, that their spot might be up for grabs that you'd really like to see make the most of their opportunities in the fourth and fifth Test against India before coming to Australian shores?
Oh, I think there's a couple in the top 3. I think Zach Crawley. I mean, I think Zach will play against Australia because he's got a good record, and He obviously has played Pat Cummins nicely in the past. That doesn't mean that he'll play him well in the future, but he has done well against him in the past. And he's an aggressor at the top. He's got out in the same way in the last 4 innings. So he does that a couple of times at Old Trafford. The drums will start to beat that little bit louder. Ollie Pope at number 3 got a tremendous 100 in the first innings of the series and then has had nothing since. And that technique has been put under a lot of kind of pressure. He's really struggled to kind of block those balls on and around the off stump. So I guess those two will be the two talking points over the course of the next couple of games. But Zach Crawley will definitely be playing in Australia. England have made it very clear he's part of their system. They like the way that he plays. They're not necessarily looking at the numbers too much, but they want him in Australia. I get a feeling with Ollie Pope that if Ollie struggles over the course of the next 2 weeks, or particularly this week, it may be that they go to Jacob Ethel and have a look at him. But a lot to play for a lot of the team. I think the rest of the team, the bowling team will swap and change depending on the conditions. But up till 7, you've got Root, Brooks, Stokes and Smith, Ben Duckett, Crawley. I guess number 3 is just the one area where England may look at if Ollie Pope doesn't get any runs.
Beautiful. Just very briefly bringing it back to the India-England series, and India in particular. Shubman Gill had an awesome start to the series, almost unprecedented. But from a captaincy perspective, were you slightly surprised that he was made captain ahead of the likes of a Bumrah or a Pant or even a KL Rahul? Because he seems to have taken it by the horns, but it surprised a couple of people his captaincy choice.
No, I mean, I think Jasprit made it very clear that he didn't want to be the captain because he wasn't going to play every game. So I think he made it very clear to the BCCI. And Shubman is the natural progressor, really. He's made captaincy look very easy. He's batted well. He looked a bit iffy in the second innings at Lords when it got a bit heated. So I'll be intrigued to see if he can find that kind of that flow here at Old Trafford, the flow that he had in Leeds and the flow that he had at Edgbaston. But he's young. He's 3 games into his captaincy reign, but so far so good, and it's been a good call by the BCCI.
Beautiful. 2 more questions, mate. Final series prediction just with India. England sitting 2-1, obviously England's way. A lot riding on tomorrow's 4th test. How do you see the rest of the series playing out?
Well, I said at the start it'd be 3-1. I think we'll get a result this week because they're saying the weather will be iffy, but I think it's iffy at the start. I think then it clears out. So the way that England play and the way that they kind of get on with the game, I can't imagine there'll be a draw unless we get rain. I think it'll be 3-1 or 4-1 to England. I think England have got too many players that can hurt India quickly. India are a good young side, but I'll be intrigued to see how they bounce. They bounced back actually from going 1-0 down brilliantly at Edgbaston, but I guess the first day at Old Trafford they're going to have to win. If they win that, they'll be back on the train and they could cause a shock this week. But I just think England are going to be too strong.
Beautiful. And last one, Vaughnie, 20 years since the Edgbaston Test, 2005 Ashes series. Feels crazy to say that, but how do you reflect on it? It was a very, a lot going on in that Test match, and particularly, well remembered for the moment between Freddie and Brett Lee at the end of the match. How do you reflect on that incident, and more broadly speaking, just the result in what was an enthralling match?
Um, Gosh, I would say if we'd have lost that game, we'd have probably lost 5-0. So I always think, you win such a tight game and you get a massive boost from, just winning one game against that great Australian side gave us a huge boost of confidence. And Freddie had a great game. Our bowling attack got 20 wickets. Warney got wickets, but we managed to hit him for a few in the first innings. Obviously, McGrath not being able to play was a big positive for us. I guess Ricky's decision at the toss helps us as well. But we played well. We gained a lot of confidence from that week, but it was also a realisation of how good Australia were because they didn't have McGrath. They probably didn't play as well as they could, but they still got within 2 runs of us. And that told you the mentality of that Australian side and how strong they were, how they never gave up. You look at Brett Lee's batting, Kasparovic's batting on that last day. It was epic stuff, and the crowd and the energy. It was really that week that started the media circus, which became very strong throughout the next 3 Test matches. It was all on the back of that week at Edgbaston.